Hey, Miss Fanny Adams here. This is the video that I promised detailing how I have been accused of platforming a dangerous individual. And this is my full response to that. Unfortunately, this is recorded for TikTok, so I apologize for the format if you are seeing or watching this on any other platform. Moreover, this is most probably going to run long, so this is going to end up in multiple parts. Again, I'm sorry for that, but if you'd like to watch the full version, you can go and visit my YouTube channel. These videos will go up simultaneously, but unfortunately, like my main account, videos regarding him were flagged for bullying and harassment. I don't know who obviously put those claims in. I am in talks with TikTok Legal. I am in talk with a legal team in America based on these accusations. So yeah, that is why I'm putting this up on my YouTube channel too, because I will have my say.
My biggest problem with men's rights advocates is they often platform and hand the microphone to some of the most dangerous individuals.
And there is his claim. He has claimed that one, I'm an MRA. I'm not. But two, that I have platformed a dangerous individual. How?
And Miss Fanny Adams showing back up in my comments gives me an opportunity to talk about it.
I didn't pop back up in his comments. Brent and I had been commenting backward and forward since December 2022. Because I am banned, unfortunately, I can't provide the entire video that started this escapade with Brent. But I do have access to his, which started this whole thing. I also don't have access to my comments, even on his videos, because my main account has been banned. But I just want to show you the opener, because the opener said, I feel you've been remiss with blah, 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 blah. I am not in any way criticizing him. I was saying how he had been remiss based on articles provided on how to properly gather evidence from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Hey, Brent.
Hey, Miss Fanny Adams.
I'm actually within the psych field myself, so I have a good grasp of the literature. And I feel you've been remiss in a few areas. So I'd literally just seen the opening statement when I had left a comment on his video saying, hey, thanks for responding. Because the manner in which he responded alluded to me that we were actually going to have a discourse. And I was genuinely quite excited because at this point I was a follower of his.
Well, fantastic. Always appreciate the opportunity to learn. What do you have for me?
He then goes on to take my original video, clip and push and pull it around and make me look absolutely moronic. I was horrified. And if you could see my comments underneath, I asked him, why have you clipped me? Why have you not spoken back to me in a genuine way? One of the criticisms was, you cannot use old data. There's a reason in psychology why we have a gold standard of why we try to use something within 5 years, if possible. 10 years is now getting into a stretch, and anything older than that, we have to ask the question, why are you using it? He took that, and then he said later on, well, you told me not to use old data, but you're using an old data set to tell me not to use old data. No, the journal article was telling you how to gather evidence. We rely on old citations in terms of how we complete methodology, not in terms of what has happened within society. Those are two very different things. But instead, what he does, very cleverly, is make me look really silly. Another way is which I said, retrospective bias is fine as long as we can maybe try and control for it, etc. But we don't really want to rely on it. And then unfortunately, one of the articles was talking about retrospective bias and why we don't really like to use it. But he's clipped that as well. Watch.
So what evidence do you have that women are abusing children more?
Maker Helen Coulson in 2005 did a retrospective prevalence study of...
Wait, a what kind of study? Retrospective? Didn't we just... Never mind. What did it say?
And they found that mothers were more likely to physically harm their children than fathers. Mothers at 49% and fathers at 40%. Now again, the context to what I've just said there is missing because he's clipped me. The reason why I used that was again because I was highlighting the way in which we gather data and why using old data is inaccurate. In actuality, that point alone would have supported his stance. But instead, he glanced over it by basically postulating that I said, don't use old data or retrospective bias, but then I've gone on to use old data and retrospective bias to counter his argument. And just for transparency, I was never trying to counter his custody argument. All I was trying to get him to understand, or maybe consider perhaps, was that we need to better consider the evidence base. We don't need to play any more of the video, but essentially that's where this all started. And then I was in his comment section saying, why did you clip me? Why have you been disingenuous? And then he's trying to pull me into an argument about custody. But again, my video response to him was never about the custody rates that he had claimed or was working on. Mine was coming from a position which is very similar to what Yuval had recently done. And I've got a big long video on my YouTube channel about that, how we consider violence within the literature base, how it has gender differences, etc., and how we best gather evidence, essentially, because that informs the interpretation that we have of the statistics. And then we have the comment section. In another video, which we'll come on to, Brent said, this wasn't my finest moment. And yet he's been having not so fine moments about me since December last year. MsFA is a big supporter of MRAs, and he likes that, even though I don't support MRAs in terms of the extremists, but I do absolutely support people who are doing good work for men, just as I support feminists who are doing good work for women. But I don't support extremist ideology. It's very transparent. She says this about the data and then responds and calls me a simp. Did I? Also said I blatantly deny women's capabilities of violence, not knowing I'm an IPV survivor. It's all very childish and emotional. That's a very misogynistic thing to say of a woman, isn't it? Calling a woman emotional? But you're right, not your finest hour. But on your point about being a survivor of IPV, which I am too, after 10 years at the hands of a man, you can absolutely hold two things to be true in your mind. You do minimize the violence done by women, because in another video you said, and I quote,
"It is staggeringly obvious that violent lesbian women are not the problem."
Yes, that's a clip, unfortunately. But I would say that the women who have been on the receiving end of those violent lesbian women would say that they are actually a problem. But let's get back to the issue at hand. So I unfollowed him, but I didn't block him. And so he would often come up on my FYP and I would watch his video and I'd be like, I'm not going to say anything because I've been trounced already by this person and don't feel like he's going to have a genuine reply. So I just left it. There are times when I did make comments, and I own those comments that I make because they're public comments. But we'll get into that now.
Now, Fanny had responded earlier in the year to gloat that a men's rights group, Men Are Human, had done a takedown of me on YouTube.
Now, this is the important bit, because in another video, he then goes on to say I had nothing to do with the video whatsoever. His actual only issue is that I told someone that there were videos online about him. But he fails to provide the screenshot of that where it shows that I'm gloating about it. Or in another screenshot that I'm going to show you that I egged someone on to go and look at it. Where is it?
The group are fans of Fanny's work, and Fanny is a fan of theirs.
This is putting words into people's mouths, don't you think, Brent? And I'd be very careful to make that assertion, considering who you like and follow. But again, we'll get to that later.
So far as to join and participate in the Men Are Human Discord server.
You mean the same Discord server that you joined and participated in? So here you can see that Brent is quite happily on the server talking to people. And this is the video that he has issue with, or one of the issues he has issue with, and I can understand why. This was done by a deleted user who I believe is orange, blue orange, that he's going to talk about soon in the video. But you can see here I had nothing to do with the conversation whatsoever. At the end of the video I've just played, you can pause to read it there. I show my contempt for him actually saying that I brought him to the server, which is factually inaccurate, and you can see that he didn't actually respond to me. He was booted off the server a few days afterwards because I had made Men at Herd aware that he was actually on the server. I also have information from Men at Herd, which I will show you later, but Brent is going to go on to now discuss Blue Orange, who is the person here known as the deleted user. But you can see here that he knew of the videos, their content, and he was talking to the person who had done the videos. come back for part 2. Welcome to part 2. I apologize if you're watching this on YouTube because you'll be seeing this in the whole format. But here we continue to break down Brent's accusations of me. Let's go.
Let's take a look at that takedown that had so impressed Miss Fanny.
Because this is the classic way the psychopath presents information. He's a
narcissist. He's a narcissist. If he is accused of sexual assault or some other impropriety, I will not be shocked because he seems the sort. His stance is almost pro-child abuse.
He's a Me Too accusation in waiting.
Yeah, you can smell it on him.
People like this are psychopaths, and they are.
I cannot wait to see you being taken on camera in cuffs, accused of rape, sexual assault, or something else.
First of all, I do not condone what is said in those videos. It's why you will not see my name attributed to them. If I'm guilty by association for being on a Discord at that time when those podcasts were put out, then so too must you. Because as I've just shown, you were there at the same time as me. I don't condone what they said. I don't condone anyone being likened to a rapist. I don't condone anyone wishing harm on another person or having them being taken away. However, as I'm going to show you, you have done this about another human being too. And so why is it bad when it's done to you, but you can do it to another person?
So a couple of commenters have said you can't lump Peterson in with Tate. They are completely different. Which is true only in the sense that Coke is completely different from Diet Coke. It's virtually the same flavor of product, one of them's just way more upfront about how harmful it is to your health. Like Walsh, Peterson is fine with coercion and power being used for sex. Walsh is okay when your boss does it, Peterson just takes a step back and says society should do the pushing instead. But let's be clear, this is still Diet Tate with the calories removed so that your conscience feels better about consuming it. The flavor is very much still grape.
It's okay for you to essentially call Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson alleged rapists, just like Tate, but it's not okay for you to be spoken about in a podcast by people who are concerned that you are exhibiting the same behaviors as another very well-known male feminist at the moment who has been brought down by their very problematic behavior recently. Ring any bells? We'll go into this in more detail, but you did actually finally do a video on it. And we'll talk about this when we come to the accountability part of the video. But your behavior, according to these individuals, is similar to that of the other creator who has been called out recently. And that's why they said what they said. Do I condone it? No. Do I agree with it? No. Just like I emphatically do not agree with what you said about Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson.
Now bear in mind, this is not based off any allegations about me or any victims who have come forward, merely that they have watched some of my TikToks and I seem like the sort.
Right. Just like there's been no current allegations against Matt Walsh or Jordan Peterson, you've merely watched some of their content and made an opinion about them. Do you see where this is going? Moreover, it was based on your video about Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson being so-called rapists like Tate that I actually said to the person, didn't you accuse Peterson of doing the same thing? Made an entire video about it. I didn't egg anyone on because it's within this comment section. I pointed people to the fact that you have videos made about you because you had done that of other people. Where's your accountability?
And if you're thinking, hang on, don't these groups say that false allegations against men are incredibly damaging to their lives and careers? Yes.
So hereafter, he goes into his issues with the people that were on the podcast. Again, it had nothing to do with me. And again, we will come on to the fact that Brent admits later on that I had nothing to do with it. His only issue is that I told someone that there were videos about him online, which I said after he also said that other people were rapists, which is, last time I checked, a false allegation.
Have every right to fear false accusations because they're so prevalent today.
I've been falsely accused.
And Fanny has also spoken out about how devastating false accusations can be. And not only did she not call this group out, she was actively participating, supporting, and encouraging them.
Yet again, I'm asking for evidence of where I have actively encouraged and supported these people. Because again, as I've established, if it's because I was on the Discord, you were there too, and therefore you are actively encouraging and supporting them too, and you actually engaged with the person that hereafter you call a violent individual. You even tried to set up a conversation with this violent individual, which is more than I could ever say. The only thing I actually replied to, which is in your screenshots, of which I have the same screenshots, by the way, is that I said, oh, I was going to do a video on Brent too, but unfortunately I was writing my thesis. In other words, you have no evidence because I don't condone the behavior, because I don't support it. And the only thing you are really irritated about is that I said that there was a video about you online. That's what this is down to. But that is, I'm sorry to say, an objective reality. It's fact. There are videos about you online from people who do not agree with you, who say just as shitty things about you as you say about other people. And that's all this comes down to. In reality, the only podcast I ever promoted was this one. This is the Two Blokes podcast, and I did this with Tim Golditch and a gentleman named Taz. This is the only podcast that I'd ever done in the MsFA, and it's the only one that I'd ever promoted. I was really taken back when I did the podcast with Tim Golditch because I'd followed his career for decades. And the other individual I've done a podcast with is Dan from Men Need to Be Heard Too. And this is the other podcast that I have promoted because I've been actively involved in it. To say that I promoted anything else is completely false, and Brent has absolutely failed to provide evidence of it. From hereafter, Brent talks about his issues with Blue, which have nothing to do with me. I don't know whether Blue is aware of the video that has gone up about him. I've taken advice from multiple different sources about this, but I didn't want to clip the video because you needed to see it. So I am going to try and speed up the bits that are about Blue specifically, because I feel like Brent should take this up with Blue himself, being that, you know, we're all on the same Discord server together, rather than funnel it through me, because quite frankly, he has yet to provide any evidence of me platforming an alleged violent individual.
And yet a decade later, here is Blue making those same vague threats on that Men Are Human Discord server that Fanny was participating in.
So within that section there's some quite serious allegations against Blue, and the fact that Brent says that they're my new friends. Again, he has no proof and no evidence, because none exists, that he and I ever had any kind of interpersonal relationship. Moreover, once again, I will state that if I'm to be held accountable for participating in a Discord server where Blue was, then Brent too is guilty by association, because he actually had more interaction with Blue than I ever did.
Now, you do not need to be a mental health professional to see that this is not a healthy person, and they should not be encouraged or egged on in any way.
Again, though, Brent, this was an individual that you were having quite a lot of discussions with, and you were inviting to have an open discussion to be put on TikTok and or YouTube at the time. So if you knew about these threats that he was making, which quite frankly you do because you've got the screenshots of it, I wonder why you were then still trying to have a conversation with him.
Rights activists don't agree with me and we will never see eye to eye is not the problem. I welcome dialogue with those I disagree with. And in fact, I even reached out to Men Are Human to engage in dialogue with them.
So let me get this straight. It's okay for you to have conversations with the people that you don't see eye to eye with, but it's not okay for me to do that, considering I have emphatically stated I'm not an MRA. Yes, I speak to some men's issues, but I am not an MRA, and therefore I do not subscribe to the entire ideology. So why is it okay for you to have conversations and not for me?
But at the last minute, they cancelled and said they would not talk to me.
Having been in discussions with the leader of the Men Are Heard server, I believe they are formulating a response to this as well, so they can deal with that.
And in the wake of Robbie Harvey and other male creators, we've seen how feminist spaces police, call out, and hold their problematic members accountable. But this does not happen with men's rights activists.
So now he's coming into accountability, and I'm going to start this as of part 3, because he actually made a second video aimed towards me via another content creator, saying that I lack accountability. Welcome back to part 3. This is now us talking about accountability and how people who throw stones shouldn't live in glass houses.
And in the wake of Robbie Harvey and other male creators, we've seen how feminist spaces police, call out, and hold their problematic members accountable.
Except you don't. Robbie Harvey was called out just before my birthday, around July the 7th this year. It took you until the 23rd of July to make a video on him, and only then did you reply to someone who had asked you directly about it. This is your video that you did on the 23rd of July, and in the opening sentence of your description you said, "I've not done a video or talked about it, largely because the conversation didn't need my input." The most conversation that has come out about Robbie Harvey is from people that were already critical of him. See, we knew he was going to be like that, which is akin to the conversations that were being had on that podcast about you, because you exhibit similar behaviours to Robbie. Put that aside for a second. The other conversation is from people who are disillusioned and disappointed by him. Why aren't you in one of those two camps? And why did it take you 20 plus days to talk about it? Why did you only talk about it when someone asked you the question and you could make a video based off of that question to get views? Moreover, why do you think you have the right to say I should hold myself accountable for podcasts that I neither had any knowledge of were being done or was I ever a part of, but simply because I was part of the Discord server that ipso facto you too were also a part of?
But this does not happen with men's rights activists, who spend all of their time policing people like me for making men feel uncomfortable or hurting their feelings, and yet ignore the very real problem posed by individuals within their own ranks who openly and blatantly advocate for violence.
Just because people don't do things in the public sphere for likes and clicks and, some followers, doesn't mean that all of us do that. I actually spoke several times this year about individuals that I had seen with problematic behaviour. I'll show you some clips that involve Blue, but I have also spoken about a female MRA, and I had also just the other day called out a men's rights space on TikTok before I got banned. So there was actually a fracture of the Men Are Heard Discord. It fractured into two based on the actions of Blue. This is pretty much all I know, that there was something going on. This is one of the members of the old server who went on to create the other one. But you can see here on the third message up, in the other server, ? Good job I've been offline. What has happened? Because I did not know what Blue was up to. I didn't know what he was doing, and I didn't know the threats that he had made. Here I'm talking to someone else about Blue and his behaviour, and what I did see was that Blue was trying to make the MRA movement political, and I said I think it's best not to take it there, because I think that would be polarising some men versus minimising others. But at this time, I believe it was the end of February, the MRAs were talking about why can't we use violence like the suffragettes did to get our case known. That was a known discussion. And that was a discussion that I never got involved with. And that was a discussion I never made a video on, because I didn't agree with the suffragettes using violence, and I don't agree with the MRAs using violence either. And then there was this woman. I don't agree with her ideologically at all, but she received extreme backlash and bullying, harassment, because she laughed at a man who was crying. She's called out to her feminist brethren to come and help her, and yet no feminists are touching her with a barge pole. And then there was this creator who doxed her and said, "Oh, I wonder whether her employer knows that she's doing this online." And I actively called her out. Instantly. Which is more that can be said for you and Robbie Harvey.
So if MRAs want to have a conversation about ineptitude, I believe some self-reflection might be needed.
Now, having finally gotten through the first video, whereby there was no evidence whatsoever, and I've provided plenty of evidence to the contrary, and the fact that it's within my profession and my learning that I employ critical self-reflection, I have to, because we have a personal statement which reflects our biases because of when we go into working with people. This is something that engineers don't have. So the only person who should employ some personal reflection and perhaps reflect on their ineptitude with the inability to provide actual evidence would be you, Brent. Now, here's where the video would have ended, but unfortunately, he clipped once again my initial response video, of which then got reported for bullying and harassment. And he made another video entitled Accountability, which I believe I've already kind of somewhat covered. So hopefully we'll skip through this video a little bit quicker. So now we are going to see that Brent has changed his accusation from me platforming a dangerous individual, which we've spoken about just now, to now me promoting or egging on or gloating about a podcast, knowing the contents and therefore being guilty of that. However, he fails to provide evidence of that, which I've said plenty, but also he fails to provide the context in which that comment came about, which was, again, as I've said before, it came about because he too made a video about Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson being rapists. And therefore, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. But let's see what he's got to say.
Matt says this is not who people support knowingly. Do I have proof that Fanny knew about the video and its contents? Sure, here's the group telling Fanny about the video. Here's Fanny then commenting on that video. And then there's Fanny's response.
And I had chipped in on your video to this someone else and said, there's a video about him on YouTube.
In which she then describes the content of that video. There's also me, not in my finest moment, telling her the contents of that video, and her response that she was nothing to do with those people when they made that video, which is true.
That she was nothing to do with those people when they made that video, which is true.
Which is true, but that's not the point.
But yet in the first video, you had no issue with the fact that I knew about the video. You had an issue with the fact that I put a link on someone's comment saying that there were videos about you. You then made an entire video trying to say that I basically egged on and encouraged these people and participated with these people, which you provided no evidence of whatsoever, which I have blatantly showed you, which is untrue. I had nothing to do with the podcast. And now here you admit I had nothing to do with the podcast, Brent. You admit it. I had nothing to do with it. But that's not the point. And in my reaction to this video, which also got taken down for bullying and harassment, I said, what is the point then, Brent? The point is, you were irritated at an objective fact that I pointed out that there are videos about you, whereby people were saying mean things about you that they shouldn't have said. But as I also pointed out previously, you say mean things about people too.
Like Walsh, Peterson is fine with coercion and power being used for sex. Walsh is okay when your boss does it. Peterson just takes a step back and says society should do the pushing instead. But let's be clear, this is still diet Tate with the calories removed so that your conscience feels better about consuming it. The flavour is very much still grape.
And liken them to people like rapists, which is where the comment came from. Once again, this is the reason for this comment at the bottom. Didn't you accuse Peterson of doing the same? Made an entire video about it, which is why I linked that person to the podcast. Because if you can do it, others can do it too. If they're awful people for doing it, which they are and were at that moment in time, you too are also an awful person for saying that about a absolutely innocent individual.
The point is that when learning the content of that video, not only did she not call out that behaviour, she was actively encouraging and supporting other people to go watch that video and joined up and participated in that group's Discord.
You have your timeline completely confused because you're not me and you have no proof of what you've just claimed. If it was to be believed what you've just said, I'd seen that video, then had a conversation with some people who were involved in it, then joined their Discord, then done a podcast with them. That wasn't the case at all. The case was, originally, there was one Discord server of which I was invited to join because I was invited to do a podcast. That's it. And that was in January, early January, okay? Next comes our podcast that I did with Not Men Are Heard, but with another individual, Taz and Tim Golditch, like I've explained before. That was my podcast. Then there was a fracture around about 20th of February. And around this time, other podcasts were being done, as you admit, without my knowledge or dealings with. But now your issue is that I knew what was in the podcast. Again, you have clipped the podcast so that people don't know what is actually in it. The final part of this will get into the fact that Brent demands that I apologise to him and kowtow to him. So I do hope that you come back for the next part. Welcome back to my video responding to Brent and his accusations. Right now we're going to dive into how I should kowtow and apologise to Brent because I made the woeful move of watching a video about him and saying to some random person on the internet that a video about Brent exists. Let's go.
In that group's Discord. And Blue was making those comments throughout January and February when Fanny was a participant.
You two were a participant. more so than I was at that time.
Putting them down. But in her response video, there is no apology, no remorse, no regret, no accountability for her actions.
So let me get this straight. First of all, you think that I'm overly emotional and childish. But now you want me to apologize for having knowledge of a YouTube video about you. And you want me to take responsibility for the fact that it's out there, even though you admit that I wasn't involved in it, even though you were a participant on the same Discord that I was when it came out, even though you made videos calling Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson a rapist, even though you do the same behavior that you're accusing these other people of, but actually directing your hatred towards me. You want me to apologize to you.
Instead, it is a 10-minute masterclass on DARVO.
Now, because my video to you explaining what DARVO was got taken down for bullying and harassment, let's go over this again. First me, then you. If I was to be denying responsibility, I would be saying that I never made a comment stating that there were YouTube videos about you. I openly admit that I did this because there is nothing wrong with doing that, because it is an objective fact. There is also nothing wrong with doing that given the contents of those videos. For example, if I was to go on a MRA's website or to their YouTube channel and state, oh, well, Clementine Ford has said this about you, that is an objective fact. It doesn't mean that you condone it, and it doesn't mean that you celebrate it. It just literally means that there are videos about you out there, and that's exactly what I did. Now you are denying responsibility for the videos that you've made about Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson. We've been over this several times. You're also denying the responsibility that you have when people are talking about me in your comment section, but you are quite happy to go off and say that I'm childish and emotional. If you're going to hold me to one standard, let's hold you to the same. Attacks you, me than you. Where have I attacked you? Every video I've ever made was in response to you. My first video was in response to a comment that you made about custody. You then restitched me and clipped me and made me look moronic. You have then waited 5 months to make a hit piece on me, to which I have responded to you. First in an initial video where I said I would be making this longer one, which was taken down. And then you took that response video and made yet another video, which is this one, saying that I deny responsibility and I'm employing DARVO tactics. Now this is where you have been attacking me. You have basically accused me of platforming a violent terrorist, which is a very heavy and, dare I say, defamation of character accusation to make. I would be very careful in future of saying such things about another individual when your content doesn't exactly put you in a very good light, Brent, especially when it comes to communicating with women who disagree with you. Next, reversing the role of victim and offender. We can quite clearly see from my video versus yours that I'm the one with the evidence in support of basically I have done nothing wrong, to your videos where you've gone from accusing me of platforming a dangerous individual to then saying that I had nothing to do with such platforms, and the only thing I can really be accused of is having the knowledge of and sharing said knowledge that there were videos of you on YouTube.
Now, Fanny has her own equally serious accusation to make against me, that I looked at her LinkedIn profile.
What I find interesting, Brent, is that you don't talk about how you tried to find my personal information online and how you actually did find my LinkedIn online for some reason, which I can only assume, and I might be wrong, that you were maybe going to use this against me in the future.
What Fanny doesn't tell you is who gave me her personal information, which would be Fanny herself when she linked me to a YouTube video about her research on borderline personality disorder.
Are you ready for me to catch you in yet another lie? Yes, I shared with you the borderline personality disorder seminar that I put together. I don't actually remember doing that, to be fair, but whatever. But what I find baffling is that you say, oh, I then went and found her professional accreditation, when on that video itself, it quite clearly shows the institution I studied at the time, and my student number, the course number, when the thing was due, and my supervisor. How stupid would I be as someone going into the health field? Would I be to claim that I study at a professional institution, which then could be used against me in the future? There was no need to look me up on LinkedIn. No need at all, because all my information for that institution was there. My personal name was there. The institution I studied at was there. In previous videos, I've actually shown where I study, but I've hidden my information, all of my information, which includes my location, from those videos that I've put up. But now you have that information, and you know and are associated with people. I'm not going to name names, but there are other people who have made stitches of your video of me with coloured hair, who are involved with investigations for doxing people. And in fact, one of your commenters even called you on it. The commenter says here, this whole debacle makes me uncomfortable. She should have distanced herself from the cretins after that video. I don't agree with that terminology, but I did. I only did one podcast, not with the men I heard, but the people that split from the fracture. I haven't had anything to do with them since. I've been in contact with them since your video came out. And they're going to do a video as well, basically proving I have nothing to do with them. And then they also say, but also if you were conveniently seeking out her LinkedIn as leverage for an argument, that's a bit unscrupulous. To which you say, to be clear, they cited their research, sent me to that video, which had their name and institution. Exactly. So why would you need to go and look at LinkedIn? Maybe it's worth de-escalating, getting a bit close to the bone. You're absolutely fucking right, it's getting close to the bone, and that's why I've taken legal advice.
And she's absolutely correct that I have never mentioned that I have that information, or found it ever relevant to even bring up. Which begs the obvious question, if I didn't bring up this topic, why is Fanny?
But obviously, I now know your personal information.
And Fanny says she will not allow herself to be bullied and silenced.
You're absolutely right, I won't be bullied and silenced, and that's why I brought it up that you had my personal information, because you conveniently left it out when you were accusing me of things that I simply did not do. Just like, you know, you conveniently left out the fact that you were part of the Discord server too. Just like you conveniently left out that you were trying to talk to Blue at the time. Just like you conveniently left out that the whole reason why I said to this person that there was a video about you on YouTube was because you had accused Walsh and Peterson of being rapists. In other words, participated in the same behaviour that you find so dehumanising, but only dehumanising when it happens to you.
But it was Fanny who showed up in my comments, and it was Fanny who was sharing a video of false allegations against me. That's not bullying, that's holding you accountable. And I appreciate Matt's kind words saying sorry that happened to you. I look forward to Matt and the other MRAs proving me wrong on this, and holding Fanny and Men Are Human accountable for behaviour we all agree nobody should knowingly support.
I'm going to teach you how to suck eggs when it comes to being online. I've been online for 20 odd years. The more content that you put out there, the more backlash and criticisms that you are going to get from people. The more people are going to make up scenarios about you, the more people are going to be mean to you and berate you and get on you for the smallest shit. You're going to have to get your ego in check and learn how to deal with that. Because as much as that behavior is wrong, and as much as no one should do that, unfortunately, people engage in that behavior. I've had death threats from women on this app because I chose to stand up to a creator with over 1 million followers. I chose to stand up to you, and my videos have been brought down for bullying and harassment. And again, with regards to the comment section, yes, I was there because I used to be a follower of yours and I had liked some of your videos, and therefore you came up on my FYP. I in no way attacked you in the comment section, apart from when you started spouting the nonsense. I mean, there's been so many videos where you've spouted nonsense and I've said nothing. But it just so happened that you were talking about IPV rates, which basically was within my thesis too. And how many times have I said to you, you need to stop playing in the psychological pool because you don't know what you're talking about? Because there is a very big difference between engineering methodologies of research and psychological methodologies in research. Big difference. Do you know how I know that? Because not only is my dad an engineer, but I have friends and family all around the world who are engineers too, and some of them worldwide respected. So let's just draw a line in the sand, shall we? Because I've basically proven that you too engage in those behaviours that apparently are so abhorrent to you. I've proven that I had nothing to do with, and you even admit that I had nothing to do with the podcast. I admit that I said that there were videos out there about you, but I will not be held responsible for the contents of those. And so there we are. Just another case of people being mean to me and me wanting an apology for their behaviour, but it's okay for me to do that behaviour because I am untouchable. I'm not qualified to speak on that just yet, but I'll leave that door open for other people's interpretations, which I'm sure they'll do, and which I'm sure you'll take offense with. But take that up with them. We're done.